man's experience speaks for itself. He is a past district governor and a distinguished Toastmaster, and for 18 of those years he has served as a Toastmaster leader in one role or another more times than we can remember. He has been actively involved in training and molding our District 21 leaders for more years than he cares to remember, and he adds, whether they like it or not, he's been trained. Now, if he had the time, he'd say that he would like to share a story with you or two, but maybe we'll move right along. Once upon a time, there was a world with no conflict. Yeah. How many here have been married? For the second or third time? That would be a fairy tale. Anyway, please welcome our Toastmaster extraordinaire. We're talking all about conflict, Mr. Rae Stonehouse.
Thank you, Dave. I've been sitting here experiencing some trepidation because I provided Dave with that opening, that introduction, hoping he would say it word for word. And yet I know he sat in Heidi's educational on how to create a creative, conflict-filled story. So I didn't know if he was going to take me into another direction or what it was, but I'm glad that part was over, so I don't have to worry about that conflict. And I'd also like to congratulate and thank you, Dan, our keynote speaker. It's so wonderful to have a great warm-up act when you are the main attraction. Because the audience is just sitting and listening on every word I have to say on such a great topic of conflict resolution. So by a show of hands, who among us has never, ever experienced conflict? Show of hands. Hold them up high so we can recognize. You've never, ever.
Nobody believes me.
Of course we have. It's all part of the human condition. Now, as far as I know, there's only one group that does not experience conflict ever. Any Star Trek fans here? The Borg. Okay, why does the Borg not experience any conflict? Right. But why is it they don't experience conflict? No, that's coming up. That's the next slide. Don't ruin it. They don't negotiate. Okay. That's exactly what it is. They are based on a beehive or a collective mentality. One thought. They don't think anything else. They think with the guy beside them, the one beside them, they all think the same. Now humans, we have independent thinking, we have independent feelings, and we are free to take independent actions. And most of the time, we're not all on the same page. That's where the conflict arises. Now we had the answer come up here, but what is it that the Borg are known for saying? What's their two main sayings? Well, I already heard it once. Okay, assimilate. Be prepared to be assimilated. What's the other one?
Resistance is futile.
Resistance is futile. Okay. Now, supposedly, the Borg don't appear until the 23rd century, so there's some debate whether they are real or not. Remains to be seen. However, I would challenge each and every one of you to think in your business life and your personal life. I bet you know some Borg. I bet you know some Borg. Some people that they only have two ways of handling conflict.
Their way or the highway.
Resistance is futile. My way or the highway. I heard it back there. It's exactly the way things are. Or you could be working in an organization, and perhaps you don't like the way things are done, and they tell you, well, if you want to get along around here, you better start following the rules. Suck it up, buttercup. Prepare to be assimilated. Now, I've worked in psychiatry, mental health for 35 years as a registered nurse. And something I learned a long time ago, it's a saying that if the only tool that you have in your toolbox is a hammer, then every problem that you encounter will be a nail. You know, that's a metaphor, of course. We're not walking around with hammers and whacking people on the head. But think about some of the people that you've met. How do they handle conflict situations? Full of bluster, they yell, they scream, it's my way or the highway.
Or they go up.
Or they go under. Now, you can appreciate that Any good researcher, the first thing they do taking on any topic, they go to Mr. Google to find out about it. And I found out that there was some 51 million pages out there on conflict resolution. Now I have to tell you, I did not go to all of those pages in preparation for this. And I know that colleges, I'm not even sure if Okanagan College has a conflict resolution course. I know the Justice Institute of BC does. I know you can take whole degrees on international conflict resolution. You can take days, weeks, months, and years. We have what's left of 45 minutes. So we're going to experience conflict. I certainly am going to be experiencing conflict to try and get it done within 45 minutes. I've got till 4 o'clock. So it started up. I'm starting to feel the conflict right now. This is what you call experiential learning. So such a big topic. What I tried to do was to narrow the scope down so that it's a benefit for all of us that are taking on leadership roles within Toastmasters. Whether you've been a leader for a while and keep honing your skills in leadership, or if this is your first kick at the can. What we're going to do in that time very quickly, we're going to take a look at some types of conflict. We're going to take a look at some common conflict situations experienced within a Toastmasters club. Did anybody realize that there was conflict, or there could be conflict in a club? That's another one of those fairy tales people believe that, oh no, it's so wonderful in a Toastmasters club. It is wonderful. It's a lot of fun. It's educational. That's why I keep going for 20 years. But the conflict does exist. The same people that you have conflict out in the real world, they're there in your Toastmasters club. So we're going to explore very quickly the importance of resolving conflict, and all in that time, we're going to look at some techniques to resolve conflict. So you all have handouts, so you're going to have the same information that I have in front of me, except you're not going to have the exciting graphics that I have. So we're going to take a look at types of conflict. Now, as I said, I didn't explore those all 150 million pages, 1, 2 maybe. And what I found out was that it seems to be maybe 8 to 10 different types of conflict that are consistent with everybody else who creates a website and copies everybody else's material. So you're likely to appreciate the 8 that we're going to talk about. You may have your own, but these seems to be ones that work. As I go through them, I would suggest that you think about any situation in your Toastmasters club that you've experienced that kind of falls into the type of conflict, because we're going to talk about it at that point. I'm going to give you a brief overview. So conflicting resources. I think most of us, some of us can experience this one. I grew up in a family, 5 kids, 2 parents. Everybody had to be out the door at 8 o'clock in the morning, 1 bathroom. Anybody else appreciate that? That's conflicting resources right there. So you had to be up early just to... Conflicting styles. Now here's a gentleman that I would call that an eclectic style. He's certainly making a statement. But when we're talking about conflict, we're talking about the style or the way that, I guess, we react with the world. So you're working on a project. I might be a slow thinker, not slow, but slow thinker. I like to take all the steps. I'm a logistical thinker, methodological. I could be working with somebody that's one of those full speed ahead, chop, chop, let's get her done. Well, there's a good formula for conflict, because neither of us are going to be happy with each other. Conflicting perceptions. I have fun looking up, researching this one, because all the different ones here. There's all kinds of ones you can use it. Every one of us, when we look at a situation, or even an object or whatever, we're not just looking at it with our eyes and we think the exact same thing. We put in our history, our prejudices, our biases, our attitudes, our life experiences when we look at something. And then, you know, there's obviously at least a couple different perspectives there. I'm sure that people come up with more. But there's also people that are black and white thinkers. Other people are technicolor. They can see the big picture. Some people, nope, it's this way. And you can't budge them. So that's a great cause or factor for experiencing conflict. Conflicting goals. I'd encourage anybody, if you're signing on to take on a project, make sure you understand what the goals are. What is the objective, or are the objectives of the project or whatever it is you're doing? Sometimes you may get into a project with a partner and they have a different goal. They may not want that project to end, because if they're making a paycheck on a regular basis, if that project ends, end of the paycheck. So they're in absolutely no hurry. So if you're the project manager, you want to get it done, there could be some resistance there. I like this one. You're working, it's Friday afternoon. It's 3 o'clock. You have made plans to pick up your child at 4 o'clock once you get off work, and you're going to take them out to an outing, a community outing, have some fun, some family time. Your dear sweet manager comes up to you at about 3 o'clock and says, you know, I really like to get this done. I know you're going to have to work a little extra overtime, but I know you're going to buck up and you're going to do it. You should be off by about 6 or 7. You get conflicting pressures there. Do you leave, upset the boss, which could mean you lose your job or anything else, and you're not a team player, or do you disappoint your child? So there's definitely some pressure there. Conflicting roles. I always like this one. I'm a registered nurse, and I work in a psychiatric facility. So I'm sure most of you have at least a stereotypical idea of what a registered nurse does. You have an idea. We were caring individuals. We health teach. My fellow registered nurses are laughing here. We're caring individuals. We help people. We teach people. We nurture. But there's another side of our job that a lot of people don't know about. And in the case of an emergency, we have to become very directive. If there's a fire, we're not going to be talking about, and how do you feel about it? I need you to get out. I need you to get out right now. Or I work in psychiatry, so if a fight breaks up, I want you to go to your room. No argument. You're the troublemaker. That creates conflict in some of my fellow nurses, because while they're comfortable doing the one part of it, they're not comfortable being the directive part. Supportive role's easy. Directive's not so easy. I like this one. You can use Kelowna traffic, Kelowna driving. Sometimes we go through a yellow light because it changes on us, right? That's because we're in a hurry and we've got a reason. But that idiot over there just ran that yellow light. He's obviously an idiot. Look at what he's doing. So we look at ourselves and we give good reasons to what we do, but everybody else, there's always an excuse or an accusation. That's personal values are being conflicted. You quite often see this in workplaces, policies and procedures that can change on a daily basis. Sometimes they don't even make any sense. Sometimes you got to check the date because it supersedes the day before. Coming from my field of addictions and mental health, an example of this is a family that has a substance abuse or alcoholism in the family with one of the parents. So they live in that dysfunctional family setting, and the rules are such and such. But the rules can change at any given time. You're afraid to do something because mom or dad will be upset, so you change the rules. But the rules may not be the same at the beginning of the week, at the end of the week. So those people are constantly conflicted because they really don't know what are you supposed to do. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So those are the eight different types of conflicts that I found in the research that I did, and I see examples of it in Toastmasters Club, and I'm going to draw from your experiences for this next part. One thing that I would ask you, or tell you, a proviso, is that while Toastmasters International is a worldwide organization of some 17,000, 18,000 clubs, Toastmasters in our smaller version, we're family. So if you're going to be providing an example, try and keep it identity neutral, because the person you could be sitting beside could be the best friend of the person that you're telling the story about. Now, to start things off, one of the things that I have found that creates conflict in me, and I know it creates conflict in Toastmasters clubs, is that on occasion I have seen sexist language and I've seen racist language. And that shouldn't be there. You know, we're an international organization and there's absolutely no room for that. So this is some of the areas that come up in conflict. So I'd like you to draw from your experiences, especially from a leadership position, draw through provide an example, and as a group, we all have it in writing here, try and recognize which one was compromised. So does anybody like to start? Teresa.
Rae, for me, the biggest one is it's been done this way for the last 30 years and we want to do it for the next 30 years, exactly the same.
Okay, so what
If you're on the executive you have a new idea how to change something.
Okay, so what was the term? A value, or what do they call them? Types. So what type of conflict would you say that one is? Conflicting goals? I lost my copy. There's a few, so that it gives an example that there could be a few in there. Styles too. What's wrong with keeping things? What's wrong with keeping things the same way? If it's always been done, it works. Why change? Why is that a problem? Buck up. But what's the problem there? Joanne.
Sometimes it's not working.
Hmm? There you go.
Even if it is, it can be improved.
Any other comments? Change is hard.
Sometimes need to keep up with existing changes.
Well, that could be the last one, or the policy changes. Well, we experiencing that within our own, Toastmasters on an international program. If you've been around for a while, these changes aren't difficult. Changes are good. But I refer to some of my old timers like Francoise and Joanne that have been around for a while. We see a lot of different policy changes. Yeah, who'd ever thought that District 21 was split into 2 different districts? Nobody thought that. Any other observations or examples of conflict within your clubs?
People who cannot accept, will not accept any kind of constructive feedback, criticism.
Okay, so people that will not accept any kind of constructive feedback. Anybody ever seen that?
Yes.
So why is there conflict there? What would be the example of what's the cause of conflict?
An evaluation that didn't meet the person's satisfaction.
Okay, that's what triggers it. But going back to the base factors that we talked about, what is being challenged in there?
Goals.
The perception, yes, the way they reacted,
Conflicting goals.
different styles,
Values.
personal values. So there's a few things that are conflicted in there. I know in my time in Toastmasters, I have seen 2 members quit moments after delivering their 10th speech. It was CTM back in those days, Competent Toastmaster. And they quit because a well-knowing or well-meaning evaluator said, that was a good speech, but I don't think we should give you credit. You should really do that again. This is in front of their fellow Toastmaster members. This is a member that has delivered 10 speeches. So Cyril talked about levels of advancement. This is a person getting to be an advanced speaker over and above the general public. Their feelings were hurt. And for one thing, the evaluator, they do not even have any of the authority to tell that person to do it over again. That falls into the VP of Education's role. And there's ways to do that too smoother. You might want to consider doing it again. I don't think you appreciated all the goals for it. You could try it again. No. Toastmasters is not a pass-fail program. So definitely that's an example of conflict that they quit. They never came back. And these were strong Toastmasters. Other examples?
I find often with meetings, the respect for people's time so that the meeting will run well. Some people just talk and on and so they'll monopolize a conversation or meeting.
Did one of my friends here tell you to say that to me? If you've been around for a while, you learned the DTM actually stands for Don't Time Me. Rules are for other people. But you can see there are some people, time really isn't all that important. This is the Okanagan. We have something called Okanagan time. And I don't know how it happens, but people are persistently late, 5 or 10 minutes. Oh, it's Okanagan time, I'm here. They don't care. Yet, if you are chairing a meeting and you have everything minute by minute, yes, so respect of time. Some people, they may have their meeting goes from 7 to 9. 9:10, they have to be out there in the street corner to catch a bus. They don't catch that bus, they're walking home. So yes, conflict can occur. So definitely.
Using inappropriate humor or language in your speech.
And why would that be?
Personal values.
One speech that this was at a previous club, and it was filled with a lot of F-bombs. And it was funny if you could see his point of view, but half the club wanted to take him out to the corner afterwards.
Yeah. I can agree with that one. There's stuff because it creates, the way it is explained to me, it creates anxiety in some people because they're not comfortable with that. But there is an equal amount of people that aren't comfortable enough to even say anything about it. And there are also those people that they know something's wrong, but they don't know what it is. I remember years back, I was an area governor, and I went to a club. It happens to be the club I joined now, and I've been there for about almost 15 years. I went to a speech contest, a humor speech contest. By show of hands, do you remember when you lost your virginity? That's what the speech started off, and then she proceeded to tell us. So yes, that was, and this it was like an open house. We had family members there. So yes, people were conflicted. The president of the club was mortified. Mortified. You know, we made changes from there, and I've talked to different people about it. How many clubs have a joke master or a humor master tell a joke? Many clubs have some version of it. My club, our club, Flying Solo Toastmaster, years ago we changed that role to help reduce the conflict. We changed it to a teaching role where we have a humor master, a humorist, and their job is to provide what worked and what didn't work in individual speakers' presentations, rather than getting up there and having to stand and deliver. We made those changes after 32 weeks of knock-knock jokes. But the opposite was people coming in and they were fitting in sexist language, and we're having people leave. So humor is something that can cause problems. So what is appropriate in one club may not be appropriate in another. There's also club culture. There's, you know, the classic example. If I was stood up and told a joke that picked on Jews, that would be a problem because it brings in racism and religion. But if I was Jewish, I'd be perfectly allowed to do that. You know, I'm not and I don't. But that's a good example of kind of situations. So it is something that a club does need to be aware of in how to handle humor. Sometimes you'll get visitors come in, oh, I just heard the raunchiest joke. Your stomach drops. Other examples? Marion.
So as an area governor, division governor, we're often faced with situations where a club will come to you and say, I have this very disruptive person. They're turning people away from the club by their personality. And you feel like you're left alone because no one can give you the advice or direction that you need to go back to the club to say, here's what you do. And so that for me would be perspectives, be resources, be my personal values, all in common.
Definitely the interpersonal relationship. People get into Toastmasters for different reasons. They get out of Toastmasters for similar reasons. You know, it could be a matter of something else came up on the day, they can't attend it, they have other family commitments, work commitments, opportunities, or challenges with interpersonal conflict, interpersonal relationships. And I found that out really poignantly when I was serving as district governor, and I don't know if Joanne and Francoise experienced it, but one of the tasks that we had at the time was that we were serving as the Lieutenant Governor of Education and Training, the role that Cheryl's serving now, is that what we were doing is every time somebody earned an academic achievement, whether it be, you know, an advanced communicator gold or silver or competent communicator, we would send out a message to them. Sure, it was carbon copied and we sent it, we changed the name, but the sentiment was there. But a lot of them I followed up personally and I talked to those people. And they sent me messages back. They said, thank you, Ray. That really felt good to be thanked for that. However, it's bittersweet. I said, why is that? Because I'm going to be leaving Toastmasters. Well, why is that? Because I cannot get along with such and such and such. They're a bully, they're a micromanager, so definitely it's one of the reasons that we do have to deal with interpersonal relations, because if you don't deal with it, it's going to fester. Any more examples?
I have problems with, actually I can look around and I know none of my other club executives. I have problems with other executive members consistently not meeting deadlines.
Whose deadlines?
Well, as agreed upon deadlines.
Okay, so what's being challenged there for conflict?
Personal values. Do you value time management? Do you value being on time? following through?
You think there might be a root cause? When you look at these, if you break it, if we had time in any of these situations, we would break it down to a root cause. You know, something like that, perhaps the person really has not bought into the goals in the first place. Or perhaps, you know, I'm thinking about some of the situations that I've seen, you know, they haven't bought into the goals, or somebody else has bought into it for them, and they're being put into a position that they're way out of their comfort zone. Like I say, working in psychiatry, one of the other things that I learned a long time ago was that all behavior has meaning. The challenge is, what's triggering that behavior? You might never figure it out, but it's worthwhile giving a look at anything, thinking, you know, what's triggering this behavior? Why is this? And I know I don't call myself almost a senior, but a senior leader in Toastmasters, is that challenge that we have is that there are so many opportunities in Toastmasters. We had a past international president that said that if you get everything out of Toastmasters that you can get out of Toastmasters, you will never get out of Toastmasters. So there are lots of opportunities. But some of these opportunities require hard work. You can't learn leadership by sitting on your bum. You don't learn it by osmosis. You got to get out and do it. But getting some people out of their comfort zones, that's the big challenge. And that's where anybody in a senior leadership position or serving as a mentor, that's really is getting people, and that's the gist of what Dan was talking about, getting out there and doing it. Getting them past their own personal conflict. You may have your own too, but any other comments? Any other? Joanne?
I have an example of that. When I was division governor, I had an area governor 1 week left to do his area visit and put his form in. And he'd done the other ones. I happen to know that Wednesday nights his wife went out and she was mad at him because he wasn't working. And so he couldn't go out that night and leave the kids home. So anyway, I didn't know. I phoned and I asked him, you know, you've done everything else. What's going on? Maybe you need some help. I'll babysit for you. I'll do whatever it takes so you can do what you need to do. But knowing why fixed the problem. So he talked to his wife and he went and it was done. But
All behavior has meaning.
yeah.
That's you. But what if you hadn't intervened though?
What's that?
What would have happened if you hadn't have intervened?
I don't think he would have done it. I think he was stuck.
I can remember one Toastmaster that joined Toastmasters just good enough experience to tell his wife he was leaving. So she has some conflict with Toastmasters after that. He doesn't.
Conflict if somebody is actively trying to push another member out, and so therefore is trying to sabotage relationships between other members of the
I can so the comment
Sorry, we
was you have
couldn't
one
hear that,
member,
Ray.
one member trying to push another member out of the group, sabotaging things.
Yep.
That sounds like many workforces or workplaces. That kind of things happens. You could break it down to what are the possibilities of what are being challenged in there. Conflicting resources. If there's only enough work for one person and there's two people competing for it, you know, in a workplace, not necessarily in the club situation, but it could be different styles. These people don't get along.
conflicting goal, I guess. We have a different objective
Mhm.
in the group.
Yeah, some people are just nasty. They are bullies. Well, for whatever reason, if you look at something like years ago, a psychologist named Eric Burney wrote a book called The Games People Play. And when he came up with, I'm not okay, you're not okay. So it's a dysfunctional way of looking at things. So I can feel better if I put you down. And that's dysfunctional. But some people play that game. Instead of I'm okay, you're okay.
Right. I guess I'm confused within that circumstance. All behavior has meaning. So you need to find a meaning in it.
You don't need to find it. It's helpful if you think about it. Think about it, that expression of put yourself in another person's shoes. It goes back to the example that I gave about, I run the Yellow Lake because I'm in a hurry. Somebody else did it, well, they're trying to kill me. So it's a matter of thinking. Well, we actually talk about that in coming up in the next little level there of looking at resolutions. So just to put a couple conflict situations that I've seen in clubs, serving as a district governor, a lot of these things would gravitate upwards towards me because people were, I wouldn't say they're desperate, but they were conflicted themselves, club officers, because they really didn't know what to do. So everything seems to fall on the district governor's plate. You're going to find that, Cyril and me. You'll find that everything falls, even though it's got nothing to do with you, it still comes forward. Toastmasters International teaches that you're teaching, we're teaching conflict management. You're teaching how to lead a club. As the club president, how many club presidents are there here in the room? Okay, did you know all the things that you're responsible for? A lot of the stuff that we're talking about here, they fall into your portfolio as dealing with conflict. If you have a disruptive member, if you have a disruptive guest, you have some problems within the club, people fighting, money disappearing, any of those kind of problems, your bills aren't paid, they're falling into your lap. But when it comes to conflict, it's not necessarily your job to solve that problem right there. You can't go and kick somebody out of the group. You don't have that authority. One of the ways we get by that is we encourage clubs to have regular voting a member in. If you have a problem with a member that you voted in, you can vote them out. So when I was district governor, the recommendation that was told to me was that if you have as a president, you have a problem with a member of the club, don't necessarily go to the area governor, don't go to your division governor, don't go to your district, go directly to Toastmasters International. Because they have departments there that specifically deal with those kind of things. Now we're a little bit different than the United States, where they're very much a litigious society. They'll sue you for looking at them wrong, some people. We're not so much to that point. We're drifting towards there. So from Toastmasters International, who has like a financial liability plan and all that, they want to make sure that there's legal sides. So there could be real sanctions that need to be taken against one of your members. So it's always, if you don't feel desperate, don't feel conflicted, get on the phone and call Toastmasters International. Examples of conflict that I had seen, one club had a member that had a mental illness, schizophrenia. Well, so what? It's not a big deal. That's my field. I don't need, there are clubs for people with mental illness, no problem at all. It's a high number in the population. But when that person is sabotaging the rest of the club does have to get together in the leadership, and they do have to make some actions. It may be providing more support for that individual, or perhaps maybe as strong as asking them to leave. There's different ways to look at things there. We've had problems with male to female and female to male stalkers. The problems that occur in a Toastmaster club are no different than any other organization out there. We've had young women being stalked by other members. We've had men being stalked by, you can't stereotype and say it's one gender after the other. But those are, if you don't deal with them, you're going to have a problem with club. So I'm mindful of the time here, and I certainly don't want to be conflicted keeping people here late. If you look at the other side of your page, you're going to see something called peaceful conflict resolution. And it doesn't fit. No, we've already been talking about why it's important. Why is it important that we resolve conflict? Things will get worse if you don't. And I liken it to a balloon. You can only blow a balloon up so far, and then what happens? Yeah. Hopefully it's not full of something. So I've broken them down here. Now this piece of paper that's on, I photocopied, this is something that I collected probably about 15 years ago when I did another session on conflict resolution. And I'm sure there are different models out there. I'm sure every course you took will have its own model that they would recommend. And it's an acronym, so they're using a sentence after to go with each one. Now, I don't think that there's any order of priority. I think it's whoever wrote the model just plugged it in where it fit in. So these are not necessarily in an order of priority. So one of them is ours for respecting the right to disagree. Now you might in your own mind be convinced that the Borg do not exist, that they're in the imagination of Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek. I believe that they exist. We're just going to have to wait till the 23rd century to find that out. So we're going to have to agree to disagree. And I'll get back to you in about 400 years or 300 years, and I'll be right. But we're just going to have to. So express your real concerns. Quite often, in a disagreement, people could be, as an example, fighting over something, fighting over this. And that seems to be what's up front. And that's what the real problem is. But the real problem may be something that has nothing to do with over here. It's like you're mad at your spouse, so you kick the cat. So by expressing your real current concerns, you're sitting down, you're having an honest communication with the other person. Now, I will say this is all theoretical. I can't stand up and say that everything exactly works. But these are techniques to help you. Any conflict resolution, there has to be a point where you have to discuss and share common goals and interests. Now, I've not had marriage counseling. I've been happily married for 36 years, 35 for her and 1 for me. So I have not been to a That's my father's line, and he wasn't happy. You have to sit down and you have to find out what is the root cause of the disagreement. What is the root cause of the conflict? You may find out that the person you're conflicted with, they may have the exact same point of view that you do, and you're fighting the same battle, but you're fighting it against each other and not being aware of it. Or you may not even be aware of how your behavior or something that you do affects the other individual. You won't know that. Now, this stuff isn't necessarily going to be easy, because quite often in conflict there's anger involved, there's emotions. So one of us in this situation has to remain level-headed. Never been fond of this one. Part of what got me in most of my trouble was having my own point of view. And believe it or not, other people do have point of views that, okay, well, guess we have to disagree on this one somewhat. I can appreciate that. As that saying goes, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. The reason is for listening. Listening is a powerful communication technique. Listening to that other person's point of view and finding out what's the root cause of their problem. Your solution may just pop out right at that point. Listen carefully to all proposals. You have to make the assumption that if you're trying to resolve conflict, that you're actively aiming towards a resolution, not an extension of what the conflict is in the first place. You have to hope that the person or groups that you are meeting with also are working towards a solution. Now, sometimes the solution isn't always obvious. Sometimes you need a brainstorming session just to come up with some ideas. And sometimes the way things end up is some idea that person come up with is right off the wall that nobody ever considered. Back to understanding what's behind the scene is understanding what the major issues are involved. While you think you're arguing for something, there could be something else involved from it. I've had a little bit of a taste of that. Probably for a decade or so, I've been a union steward for BC Nurses Union. And I've gone from doing workplace representations for grievances. So when you get to the grievance table, the person you're representing may have a totally different person than the employer who's alleging or accusing. And somewhere in between, the truth lies. But what's the major issue? The person may have been charged with such and such, or alleged, but that may not be anything to do with that at all. It could be this person's not happy with that person. So getting it on the table, finding out what the major issues are. Think about probable consequences. It's great to come up with an idea right away and you think it's going to be the resolution to all your conflict. I don't know if anybody's heard the news in this past week. I can't tell you where it happened, but it happened somewhere in the United States. You hear this about the school and the lunch program? You hear this? Somebody in their infinite wisdom, and I think it was an administrator of the school, I guess there was a conflict with the parents. The parents hadn't been paying either tuition or some lunch fees or something like that. So the administrator, in their infinite wisdom, decided to take all the students' lunches and throw them in the garbage. So they starved all day long and they went home. So they were being used as leverage to go home and cry and moan and whine and complain to their parents. So a solution, not the best solution, didn't think about the consequences. They weren't obviously aware that it was going to go viral and it's all over all the news services around the world. But I wonder how many people, I think there might be some job opportunities at that school next week. So think about the consequences. You can come up with an idea, but you could be going from fire to, frying pan to fire. You could end up worse. So as in this one here, imagine several possible alternative solutions. So in that case about the lunch program, perhaps they might have considered about having a meeting, bringing the parents in and identifying, this is the problem. If you don't pay your money for this, we can't provide these services. We can't pay the wages. So, that might have been a viable solution. Sometimes in a conflict resolution, you're not always going to get what you want. Sometimes you have to make some compromises. Compromise doesn't mean that you give up everything, that you lose. A compromise means that you are looking for a win-win solution, that both of you walk away from the table. And I'm assuming that there's two people. There could be larger groups. There could be communities fighting over some kind of a resource. That everybody walks away and feeling like they've won in some capacity. The challenge for any of us is to try to put yourself in a leader position so that you're the one trying to create these win-win situations. Because sometimes the other individual not really vested in losing something. So the last one is negotiating mutually fair cooperative, that's a tongue twister, negotiate mutually fair cooperative agreements. That's back to that win-win. Trying to come up with a resolution, meaning that the situation has been resolved. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go away. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to solve itself. It may need to be revisited. So the mutually fair cooperative agreement is we may try something for so many days, so many months. We'll revisit it at another time. I've got 1 minute left and I don't know how to spend it. So so the point I wanted to make with all this thing, conflict resolution is such a massive topic that you literally could spend days and weeks taking it. Conflict resolution is important to keep in mind when you're in your Toastmasters club, because I'd hate to find out that any of you left the club because there was some interpersonal conflict or something that you were not able to resolve, and your fellow Toastmasters weren't aware of it, and that we could have helped you with it. These are also skills that you can practice in your real life. I wish I had known them when I was 19 years old. Life would have been completely different. So thank you for allowing me to present to you. I've had fun. Almost forgot the last slide. Thanks for hanging in to the end. That's Fergie. That's her favorite hangout. Yep.
Thank you, Ray.